So since the break of UFC 281, where Alex Pereira defeated Israel Adesanya, we had some downtime where we were able to see multiple different personalities, analysts, fighters, coaches, referees even, talk about that fight and what was going on. And it seems like most of the platforms out here are mainly talking about how Israel Adesanya was doing so well before he got finished and not necessarily focusing as much on Alex Pereira. Not really looking at the fact that he beat him 3 times, 2 times in kickboxing, now 1 time in MMA, showing that pretty much Pereira not necessarily has Izzy's number completely because they are close fights always, but he's clearly the better fighter when they get in there together. It's not the same kind of disrespect you saw when people talked about Charles Oliveira, but there's a bit of ignorance on Alex Pereira and not noticing, not acknowledging how special of a fighter this guy is. More than just the platforms, but now the betting odds have come out about the rematch, and Adesanya is a favorite again. This is pretty insane. I've never seen a fighter lose to the same guy 3 times and then come out in the rematch as a favorite. He was a big favorite going into the last fight, and now he's a small favorite going into the rematch. I understand the mentality going into it, the fact that Israel Adesanya was winning the majority of the fight. He was up 3-1 on the scorecards, but this is like the same kind of thing happening over and over again. The second fight as well, Adesanya was winning the majority of it, and then he gets knocked out. In this one, he was winning the majority of it, getting takedowns, landing shots at a distance, even hurt Pereira in the first round, but then he gets instantly hurt. I think too many people are looking at it like Alex Pereira is just getting these kind of lucky finishes at the end. He seems to be the less skilled fighter up until his power is able to take over and get this knockout or whatever, and it's actually on Adesanya because he shouldn't be getting hit by this kind of stuff, so they believe in his chances to fix things between each fight to make it work and not get hit by the big punch, but he keeps getting hit by the big punch. It's not a lucky finish, it's not a lucky knockout. It's a very interesting perspective to have like that, where they trust more in Adesanya's ability to win on the scorecards more than Alex Pereira's ability to knock him out. And the man that walks around at 230 pounds in the middleweight division, they were saying that he was getting into the octagon like 215 to 220. Yeah, that guy's punches and kicks are going to hurt. And we learned in the post-fight press conference that even the leg kicks and the checks from Pereira were damaging Adesanya's leg throughout the fight to the point where he said his leg was compromised and he couldn't really move too much. And if you realize the way Alex Pereira is throwing his kicks, he wasn't winding up. It's something we talked about before. Like, notice his stance, how it's so square to his opponent. He's not sideways, so it's a natural big rotation. With your body being square to your opponent, and his hips are naturally forward sometimes, he doesn't have this big wind up into his kicks, but they're still that damaging. The guy just hits differently. His strikes have a different kind of power. There's no wind up to almost anything he does. But he all he needs is one of anything to hurt you. Maybe not knock you out, maybe not crush your leg with one kick, but you're going to feel the heaviness of each individual strike. And if you're trying to win this on the scorecards, if you're trying to gas the guy out, take him to the ground and do all that stuff, which is actually what Adesanya said his game plan was, get Pereira tired, take him to the ground and use his grappling in order to win the fight. You're naturally going to get beaten up round by round from this guy's heavy strikes. A lot of people don't trust in Alex Pereira's cardio. I mean, it's crazy because he just finished Adesanya in the 5th round of a fight that had a lot of grappling, which he's very new to. So even under those kind of circumstances, if you try to wrestle him, the guy can still knock you out in the 5th round. He still has that kind of power. But the other thing here is, perhaps his cardio isn't as good as Adesanya's, but regardless of that, he's going to be hitting Adesanya the whole fight, whether it be to the legs or to the body or to the head, and Adesanya is going to slow down, maybe not because of his cardio, but it's because his body is going to start failing him from all the damage he's taking. And at the end, it can kind of equal itself out there. Cardio versus damage to the body. And it didn't look like Pereira was that damaged in the fight. Besides, of course, getting hit by that big punch in the first round. But when you talk about like the leg damage, the body damage, he got hit by some big body kicks. It didn't look like it affected him that much. And regardless of the rematch, you're always going to see Alex Pereira push Adesanya backwards to the fence. And anytime that happens, Adesanya is in some big trouble. Especially now feeling Adesanya in the clinch and feeling him in the takedowns and all of that stuff. A lot of people seem to also have this misconception that Adesanya is just so much better of a wrestler and grappler. He is definitely better on the ground, but if you notice the way he even got to the ground, it was actually from Pereira making huge mistakes trying to trip out Adesanya, which for sure is going to be drilled into him not to do going into the rematch. Glover Teixeira is going to be looking at those mistakes and tell Pereira, hey man, we are never doing that again. You could try to take this guy to the ground with a double leg like you did before. You're very strong, you're very big, you're only going to get better with your wrestling. Your size is going to be able to get this guy to the ground and then you're able to hold yourself on top of him, but just don't go too crazy. But don't come out with these trips and stuff like that. Don't go out for the knee bars and stuff like that. Adesanya tried to take Pereira to the ground, remember. There were a few times in that fight where he tried to go for a single, try to go for a high cross, try to go for a double. He wasn't even budging the man. That's something a lot of people have to notice as well. Traditional takedowns without Pereira himself getting off balance, Adesanya is going to have a very hard time. If not, it's almost going to be impossible for him to take Pereira to the ground. The guy is just way too big and way too strong. And here's the other thing. A new fighter to a sport is going to learn faster than someone's been doing it for a long time. So the progression that Pereira is going to make in his next fight, I anticipate it's going to be even bigger than Adesanya's progression, how much better he's going to get. I am expecting Pereira to look better in this fight, more than Adesanya is going to look better. And I think people should get to the place where you gotta respect this man. You can't look at Alex Pereira as someone who was losing the majority of the fight, got a lucky knockout, or, a knockout that probably won't happen again. This guy keeps replicating the same results. There is nothing lucky about this. Everything is calculated. And not only that, the man has an immense amount of confidence going into this rematch. Imagine how much confidence you have to have knowing that you beat this guy already 3 times. There could be a level of complacency or the point where you don't want to fight this guy anymore. You've been tied with him for years. But Pereira doesn't strike me as someone who would get bored with a certain challenger, because he himself also said that Adesanya does deserve a rematch. So he's looking forward to it. He's expecting it to happen. And for sure, he's at least mentally preparing for the rematch. And I think this rematch of Adesanya is going to open people's eyes once again.